Alright, budget magic time. Playing some blue-white spirits in modern. Oh, a single island. I think we got a mulligan this one. Okay. We'll keep this. This is fine-ish. Ooh, I like Mausoleum Wander. I like that a lot. I mean, it's kind of slow, but let's just Sajiri Refuge go. Windswept Teeth for our opponent. Let's Port Town, Reveal Island, pass the turn. Leave up Mana Leak, leave up the ability to flash in a Rattle Chains. And once we get a Rattle Chains down, then we can like flash in Mausoleum Wanderers to counter stuff and do all sorts of tricks. Overgrown Tomb for our opponent, tapped. Looks like Abzan, most likely? Let's pass. That might sound crazy, but I actually don't want to just get our Rattle Chains killed. It's so good if we can untap with it. And then we can even protect it from Abrupt Decay with our Spell Queller. Oh, this is not what I expected. Grizzly Salvage, eh? Well, this might be crazy, but let's Rattle Chains. It gives itself hexproof. Then this lets us flash in Mausoleum Wander, and then just sack it to counter Grizzly Salvage. Seems like a fine, complicated but reasonable force spike target. I was thinking this was Abzan, but this doesn't appear to be just strictly Abzan. That's a Grim Flayer and a Birds of Paradise. Well, let's play Port Town, tapped, and just pass the turn. Really don't want to get hit by this Grim Flayer if we can help it. Our opponent also might not want to trade it with a Rattle Chains. Another land for our opponent. Eldrich Evolution. Well, this seems like a reasonable time for Spell Queller. Get rid of the Eldritch Evolution. Also gives us a good blocker for Grim Flayer. Opponent passes. Come on, creature. Glacial Fortress. Well, let's play Glacial Fortress. Get in with Rattle Chains. And pass the turn. Our situation is still not great. We're like a Path to Exile away from, or Abrupt Decay away from our opponent hitting us with Grim Flayer. And then things go south in a hurry. Temple Garden, tapped. Opponent passes. Creature? Ooh, that's the creature we wanted. Alright, play the plains. Get in with Rattle Chains. Now we actually have protection for our Spell Queller. We're still going to leave it back on defense, but being able to flash in a Rattle Chains, give it hexproof to protect from Abrupt Decay, Path to Exile, that's big game. Still would like more creatures, and this seems like a good Moorland Haunt matchup, but opponent passes. Eternal Witness, well, seems like a good time for a Mana Leak. Creature? Moorland Haunt? Sajiri Refuge. Alright, let's get in with Rattle Chains. And pass the turn. So our opponent needs a sorcery in the graveyard, or like an artifact or something, to pump up this Grim Flayer. There's the sorcery. Unburial Rites gets back Birds of Paradise. Pumps up Grim Flayer. Alright, well now I guess we just go into race mode, or hope we draw something to bounce Grim Flayer. But they're going to get to start setting up their draws with Grim Flayer. I think we are sort of winning the race though. Does some milling, including a Life from the Loam. Unsubstantiate is not horrible. Would have been nice before our opponent got in that Grim Flayer hit, but it's still reasonable. So we'll get in with both, put our opponent down to 9, and pass the turn. Opponent goes Dredging. Another Unburial Rites. Milled. Kitchen Finks gains our opponent up to 11. We could Unsubstantiate, but then it just comes down next turn anyway. Oh, it comes down right away from the birds. Alright, there's Kitchen Finks. Opponent gets in with Grim Flayer. I think we got to save Unsubstantiate for a flashback Unburial Rites at this point. We do need more creatures. Creatures and Vapor Snags. Moorland Haunt, acceptable as well. Opponent does some more milling. Life from the Loam to get back some lands. That's fine. Plays a Windswept Teeth. That's fine. Another Rattle Chains. Alright, let's get in with both. Our opponent actually loamed away the Grim Flayer. Put our opponent to 7. There's actually a potential path to victory here, depending on what our opponent does. Drops to 6. There is a world where a combination of double Rattle Chains and Unsubstantiate just wins us this game. Our opponent shuffled away their Scries. They go again with the Dredging of Loam. Attacks with both. Hits us down to 7. Alright, so this is the turn. We're going for the win. Does some more milling. See what our opponent does. Goes Unburial Rights, targeting a Siege Rhino. Well, let's unsubstantiate the Unburial Rights. Double Rattle Chains. Oh, no. Oh, tap land. Okay. What's our opponent have? 2 cards in hand. Removal spell does get us. Loam doesn't get us unless they have a path off of their birds. So we Rattle Chains. Give a Spell Queller Hexproof. Then we Rattle Chains. And this might be Xaxes. Unless our opponent's... Yes! And we got... Oh, we got there! Wow! 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 The sneaky Rattle Chains kill. Just enough. Wow! Well, Tormod's Crypts, 100% coming in. Celestial Purge, also coming in. Stuff that we don't want. What's on our don't want list? Maybe go down the... Well, Negate does get Unburial Rights. Unsubstantiate's actually good against Flashback to Unburial Rights as well. How do we deal with turn 2 Grim Flayer? Well, let's go down 1 Figure of Destiny, 1 Mana Leak, and a... Maybe go down 2 figures. Let's try it like that. That was a super close game. We got there, though. Well, we have Moorland Haunts, which could be good. I guess we keep. We don't have white mana, which is bad. But once we draw white mana, Moorland Haunt becomes... Seems like it'll be very good in this matchup. Overgrown Tomb, tapped for our opponent. Come on, white mana. Alright, Island Goo. Razor Verge Thicket. And there's Grim Flayer. Well, white mana for Celestial Purge? Maybe? Oh, Prairie Stream enters tapped. We could go Rattle Chains Ambush? Is that worth it? We do have Moorland Haunts. But then what do we do next turn? Yeah, let's just Prairie Stream tapped. Pass the turn. Vapor Snake Grim Flayer. Not exciting, but I think it's fine. Because then they recast it and we just get to untap and Celestial Purge. So Vapor Snag. Keep our opponent from getting in the hit. Replays it. We draw an island. So let's play the island. And I guess we just pass. I still think we're going to try to keep from getting hit by this Grim Flayer. Risky, because it could let our opponent Siege Rhino or something. I guess we can wait. I guess our opponent's going to get in 1 hit with Grim Flayer. 1 hit with Grim Flayer lets us leave up a Spell Queller, and then next turn we can Celestial Purge plus Mana Leak or Rattle Chains. So we just hope this isn't the greatest Grim Flayer hit of all time. I think because we have the Moorland Haunts, we actually have a chance of going long against this deck in this specific game. Forest, milled. Other 2 stay on top. Another Grim Flayer. So let's just... Problem is if we Spell Queller, then they just path it. So let's just Mana Leak the Grim Flayer. Another land for our opponent, tapped. Glacial Fortress. Alright, Glacial Fortress, go. Opponent goes to combat. Let's just Rattle Chains and try to trade off that way. Our opponent will get the trigger, but Grim Flayer down. And this leaves a Celestial Purge in our hand to take care of a Siege Rhino, which would be a card that would be tough to beat. That's not something we really want to keep bouncing back to our opponent's hand. Inquisition. Alright, well, there goes our Siege Rhino answer. Alright, take Spell Queller. That's fine. Moorland Haunt, goo. Another Drog Skull Captain for the lock would also be nice. Windswept Teeth. Cracks it. Untapped. Ooh, Thragtusk? Yikes. Okay. Well, Thragtusk is scary. I was worried about Siege Rhino, but Thragtusk is pretty bad as well. Well, let's Moorland Haunt. And Drog Skull Captain. Get in for 2. I guess we just gotta try to race Thragtusk somehow. Opponent gets in with Thragtusk for 5. Down to 12. Oh my lord. Okay. Never mind. Well, now I don't know if there's any way we win. Creature? Spell Queller, not super exciting. Sajiri Refuge. I guess we attack with everything. Nah, maybe we leave back 1 Spirit. We might actually just have to Spell Queller and Spirit double block. That still doesn't get us to winning, though. Well, let's Spell Queller. Block a Thragtusk. Ugh. Down to 8. Opponent gets a beast. No. Oh my god. Unburial Rites a Thragtusk. Ooh, Selfless Spirit is actually interesting here. Selfless Spirit. Pass the turn. This does let us kill some stuff. I don't know if it's enough, though, because they still have that Unburial Rites, so they just keep getting back Thragtusks. We seem ill-equipped to deal with a deck that's playing a million Thragtusks. Opponent has Engineered Explosives X3. Goes to combat. Well, let's kill the Beast token. Kill a Thragtusk. I just don't think this matters, though. Because our opponent gets another Beast and just gets to get back another Thragtusk next turn. We're down to 3. Opponent cracks Engineered Explosives. Well, exile Drog Skull Captain. Spell Queller doesn't hit Unburial Rites. Yeah, we're just, I don't think there's any winning from here. This will be the, what, 5th Thragtusk our opponent has resolved? So, Spell Queller. Kill the Beast token. Jump the Thragtusk. Another land for our opponent. Grim Flayer. Flashes back on Burial Rites. Gets another Grim Flayer. Interesting. Well, make a token. Drog Skull Captain. And pass the turn. Opponent goes to combat. This feels bad, but I think we got a Chump Thragtusk. Double block Grim Flayer. And then Celestial Purge, the other Grim Flayer. Opponent has something else? Haunted Dead. Okay. And there's a land, alright. Oh, well that was interesting. 5 Thragtusks is way more than our deck can reasonably deal with. So I think we need another mana leak because of that. We can't let that happen. And what do we go down? I guess a Vapor Snag. Maybe even 2 Vapor Snags. A lot of our opponent's stuff isn't stuff we really want to bounce. So we get to play first. Oh no. We're going to try this. This is probably a really horrible idea, but we have Maelstrom Wander into Maelstrom Wander, and hopefully we draw lands. Like, this is actually pretty aggressive. If we just happen to go land into land, this hand could easily win before our opponent gets to the Thragtusk point of the game. Windswept Heath, cracks it. Overgrown Tomb, untapped, and Inquisition of Kozilek. Alright, well, hopefully we draw land. They probably take our Maelstrom Wander, or Mausoleum Wander. I keep saying Maelstrom Wander, don't I? I think I've said that for the entire match. Maelstrom Wander is a good card too. It's not in this deck, but it's a reasonable card. They go with Drog Skull Captain. Land? Please? Alright, that works. So Mausoleum Wander. Pumps up Mausoleum Wander. Get in for 2. Sajiri Refuge. And pass the turn. So we got a shot at getting the tempo win here. Inquisition. Is it worth sacking a Mausoleum Wander? Let's let it go. Takes our Rattle Chains. Plays a tap land. Creature? Land? Oh, the best land! Wow! Well, sometimes you run good. Spirit Token, double pumps Mausoleum Wander, get in 4/4. Well, from keeping that one lander to where we are now, we have run pretty well. Wow! Yeah, I mean, lucky is a fair characterization of what happened. Opponent goes with Explosives X1. Can't do anything about that. Land, untapped. Blows Explosives. We get a negate. Would have been better last turn. Well, let's get in with our Spirit and pass the turn. Plains for our opponent. Grim Flayer. Okay. Well, let's make a Spirit. There's Glacial Fortress. So let's get in with both Spirits. Put our opponent down to 6. Pass the turn. Do we just take the Grim Flayer hit is the question. I'm leaning towards yes. I mean, it's not good. But another Spirit here puts us on a 2-turn clock. And it also puts us in a position where we could just draw a Drog Skull Captain, pump everything up, and potentially just win. Opponent mills a pile of Siege Rhinos. Passes the turn. Alright, so make another Spirit. We draw Glacial Fortress. So play Glacial Fortress. Attack with everything. Stirring Wildwood. Alright, let's unsubstantiate Stirring Wildwood. Puts our opponent down on land as well. Opponent drops to 3. Alright, opponent, what do you have to get out of this? They can't play a Thragtusk. Untap land would let them Siege Rhino, but they missed their land drop last turn. There's the tap land again. Grim Flayer goes attacking. We're going to take it. Sure. We take 4. You get to set up your library, fill your graveyard. We have a negate in case our opponent has an engineered explosives. End of turn, we get to make another Spirit. Feeling pretty good that we managed to tempo it out. Kitchen Finks. Wow. Alright. So our opponent's going to live another turn, which means our opponent could theoretically land Thragtusk. We draw a Selfless Spirit. So let's attack with everything. Put our opponent to 1. Play a Selfless Spirit. And pass the turn. Does our opponent have a untapped non-pain land into a Thragtusk? Goes to combat. Gets in with everything. Celestial Purge Grim Flayer. No scrying. No graveyard filling. Can't play a shock untapped. Can't play a fetch to get an untap land. What do you have, opponent? Eldrich Evolution. Oh. Oh my. Wow. Wow. No! And now... Oh! Well, now we're going to lose. Wow. Unbelievable. Unreal. Well, I guess we should have taken the hit from Grim Flayer. I guess that was a punt. I was thinking that our opponent's out was to mill Unburial Rights to get back a Siege Rhino, since we knew they didn't have the lands. So that's what I was trying to play around. But it appears that we played around the wrong thing. There's a Rhino. Well, Mana Leak Rhino. A Vapor Snake could actually be helpful. Or creatures, just creatures. The problem is our opponent has the mana now, so if they do have a Thragtusk, the game is basically just going to end. What's our draw? Plains, not at all what we were hoping for, and that likely is the game. Put our opponent to 2, pass the turn. Wow. Well, looks like I played around the wrong thing. A bit disappointing, really. Because it felt like we were very favored here. So to have things go wrong, I guess I should have played around Eldrich Evolution. It wasn't out in that scenario. Well, negate Eldrich Evolution. Opponent follows up with Engineered Explosives X0. Do we draw a creature? We draw a Selfless Spirit. Opponent only has 1 card left. Well, let's get in with our Spirit, see what our opponent does. Alright, cracks it. Well, Selfless Spirit, pass the turn. This puts us in a position where, barring a life gain creature, or another Eldritch Evolution, that we have an out of drawing a Unsubstantiate, a Vapor Snag, something to deal with that Stirring Wildwoods. Opponent goes with Inquisition, sees that our hand is empty. Well, regardless of who wins or loses, this was an extremely close game. Opponent passes. Come on, Vapor Snag for the win. Moorland Haunt, not what we wanted. Play the Plains, pass the turn. This is giving our opponent time to draw into all their big hitters, and oh, that was a big draw step to miss on. I expect things to go badly, very badly, any second here. Opponent gets in for 1. Unburial Rights the Siege Rhino. That's the draw. Our opponent drew it. Well, and there it is. 1. Oh. Well, that's the story of the game. Our opponent top deck first. If we had drawn the Vapor Snake last turn instead of this turn, we win. Now it's pretty much game over. We can get in with Selfless Spirit, but this is very unlikely to matter. Wow. Okay. Wow. Well, that was a very close match.